One of the toughest things in the world, in life, is to watch a loved one die. Even worse, even harder, much harder, is to know that they're dying separated from you. And the most brutal of all is when you want to help them and you are rendered helpless to because somebody is brutally, not out of needing to keep them isolated for everybody's well-being, but just brutally separating you. And that is the worst, I think. And this week, we're going to take a look at somebody who faced that issue and faced that experience. It's 12 months since the UK went into its first lockdown. We're sort of registering the anniversary in a number of ways, I think, in our minds. We are particularly appreciative of people who have served loved ones that have gone into COVID wards and been separated from the support of families and other carers. And we notice very much the figures: 127,000 UK COVID related deaths, or 2.8 million globally recorded, which of course is less than the real figure. And when we look at numbers like that, and remember, none of those people are statistics, all of those are people like you and me, real people with real lives and real value. And then when we think that their loved ones just increases exponentially, massively, the number of people who've been affected by COVID-19. It's a grim story, and it's blighted our lives in a number of ways. Taught us a lot of lessons, not all of which we wanted to learn. Anyway, it's Palm Sunday, and that's the annual celebration of the day when Jesus rode into Jerusalem. It's often marked by remembering the eagerness of the crowd, the enthusiasm of his friends and disciples, waving palm branches, putting their cloaks on the road, those kind of things, shouting out enthusiastically. A real buzz in the air. The only thing is, though, I'm not sure Jesus was enjoying that buzz. Just immediately beforehand, he had been talking to his disciples about the business of power. And he was trying to persuade them to change their understanding of power. It's really hard to do because, like you and me, they had grown up in their culture, and cultures pretty much everywhere in the world teach you that power and wealth and fame or celebrity, prominence, these are the desirable things that make a life a success. Jesus was trying to get them to see a completely different picture, that none of those things have anything to do with a successful life. The successful life, he wanted them to understand, was a life given in service. Servanthood is success, the complete opposite of how people generally understand things. That was not the only misunderstanding that was in the air that day. Many of the scriptures that people were shouting were being misunderstood too, because the people's culture had taught them that when the Christ, the Messiah, arrived in Jerusalem, this would signal a change in Israel's fortunes in relation to other countries, and various things would happen. There isn't time to go into it. But Jesus said, no, I'm not going in to Jerusalem to start that thing that you think I'm going into Jerusalem to start something completely different. And it begins with me dying. I'm going there to die. People couldn't accept it. People couldn't get their heads around it or believe it. Culture actually prevents us. It can help us, but it can also often prevent us from seeing and understanding the message that is there for us in the scripture. Jesus's culture, the culture in which his life and death took place, it was a culture in which men and women's roles and status were very, very separated and very segregated and different. So it's against that background that Rose and I would like to share with you this Sunday about a very particular disciple, Mary of Magdala. She was among the throng, no doubt, on Palm Sunday, simply because what we know is she was part of the body of disciples that moved with Jesus, and she was part of a group of women in that discipleship community that supported Jesus and the 12 apostles who'd all given up their jobs so they didn't have income, so supported them financially from their own means. But enduringly, Mary at least and some of the others supported Jesus and the 12 apostles by looking after them, by making arrangements, by providing, by releasing them to their gifts and their calling, which demanded so much. And this gift that Mary had, this wisdom actually of serving, is what stands out. When Jesus was trying to help people change the way they understood his arrival in Jerusalem, he said, look, I did not come to be served. I came to serve and to give my life as a ransom for many. Jesus always led by serving, something people found very confusing, and we still do. Mary followed by serving. So really, she's the most outstanding of all the disciples because she clearly understood this simple wisdom that Jesus was trying to convey. If you want to follow me, you follow by serving. Well, Mary did that, had done since she took up with the band of disciples some while before. Mary and the other women would prove absolutely critical in the days ahead, the days just coming after Palm Sunday, Good Friday, and then Easter. Before I go any further, let me just say, if it happens to be that you're one of those 2 or 3 people who don't do the reading first but come straight to the main message, maybe you got up the wrong time today, clocks have changed or something, and you say, oh, just quickly get to the main message. There's no such thing this week. Rose has shared part of the main message along with the reading. So that really does need to come before this bit. Please hit pause now. Let Rose share with you the reading and her comments on it, her help to understand it and interpret it and engage it. And then please then revisit this if you'd be so kind. If that's inconvenient, I'm going to make it up for you. The supplement message, if you're one of those who follows that, is very short this week. I don't know what it was like for Mary to stand on Good Friday and watch the Jesus she loved die. It was horrible. She was there to support him because she always wanted to support him any way that she could. And she was there to support him in his time of death, and she was forced to stay at a distance and not help him at all. She was standing with Jesus' own mother. Can you imagine the mother's pain at watching her son being brutally killed in a public place and also being required to keep her distance? Mary accompanied Mary, the mother of Jesus, and stood with her in that moment. Can't imagine that burden on either of them, but looking at Mary Magdalene, not Mary, the mother of Jesus at the moment. And just what is it to stand with somebody in such a time? Well, COVID will have brought various experiences to light that might give us some insights. But there's a difference. Wicked and harsh as the COVID-19 experience has been, there's an even greater difference when the person you love that is dying because people are killing him, not because, despite people trying to help, he's dying anyway. The people around Jesus are not trying to help. They are making sure the death is painful. That's what they're there to do, and to ensure the death and to make it bad. So it's a ghastly scene to even think about. I've actually been ministering to a few guys, 2 or 3 guys on death row. That's an experience I happen to have within my ministry. I can tell you it's not like sitting at the bedside in a hospital or in a bedroom accompanying somebody through their last moments of illness or injury. It's different when you know what is happening here is somebody's going to kill you. Somebody's here to kill you. That's what's happening here. It's a different scene. And I remember my grandfather talking to me about his experience as a minister, one of the last people to be hung in the UK. Well, my granddad spent that time with that man's father. He said, I remember he didn't tell me much about it. He said, there's nothing to do but leave the house and walk and walk and walk and walk. There's nothing you can do when your son is being hung and you have to do something. So we just walked and we walked and we walked. I remember him telling me that. It's a harsh place to be. And that's where Mary Magdalene was, because she was faithful to the last. She and the other women. When the leaders didn't know how to lead on Good Friday and on the Saturday and then on the Sunday, when the crisis hit and the men hid, it was this group of women who showed the way to keep going. It was this group of women who went out and about in the danger areas. It was this group of women who stayed faithful and kept finding the way to serve. When Jesus died, Mary was there watching from a distance because that was as close as she could get to help him. And after he was dead, she did what so many people in this COVID year have done, which is done her best for him after his death, by tending to his body, by accompanying his body to the place of burial, and by sitting there for a while after the tomb was sealed. Then she went to prepare the spices and embalming so that she could come back with the other women and look after his body in the very final act of servanthood. But being a devout Jew, she waited because the Sabbath now was upon them. So they had to stop their preparations and they had to wait for Sabbath to go, because they would honour God by even holding back from this heartfelt act of servanthood. And then on the Sunday, when the Sabbath was over, they would go. And so it was, and perhaps it shouldn't surprise us, that this is the person with whom God entrusted the first news of Easter. He is risen. This Mary, this person in a culture that looked down on women, this person who had given herself in servanthood, was the person to whom Jesus first spoke, is the person to whom God gave the first experience of the resurrection and the message: you need to go and tell other people that death does not have the last word. I'm God and I get the last word. Love gets the last word. Life gets the last word. Servanthood gets the last word. Everything else is pretty much a waste of time. Loving servanthood, serving others. The Son of Man, said Jesus just before Palm Sunday, didn't come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Well, in my culture, ransom is something that kidnappers ask for and demand. But in Mary's culture and Jesus's culture, ransom was a price given to release a person from their slavery to live their free life as a free person. It was a great act of love to find the cost. And Jesus' act of love was to say, the cost of true freedom for people is going to be met by me going up to Jerusalem to die. So I'm going to do that in loving servanthood And the way to follow me is the servant's way. This is the Jesus who washed his disciples' feet. This is the Jesus that Mary seems to have understood better than most, and whose life was faithful, courageous, leading, inspiring, whose actions were well judged, devout, devoted, so true to everything she stood for, and so faithful to the Jesus she loved. I'm so glad to share with you this brief message. There's so much more always that I want to say, but I'll be saying a little bit more about Mary, and so will Rose next Sunday. God bless you and keep you safe and help you keep others safe in the week ahead. God bless.